Alright, so nandito tayo sa huling, sabi ko ba na huli na una? Or ano, hindi ko alam kung ano sasabihin ko, but somehow, ito na yung mga topics natin for grade 10, and then yung topic natin for first grading period focuses on the earth science, but isa lang yung topic talaga dun sa na nakafocus talaga dun sa earth science, which is all about the plate tectonics, and then medyo related siya sa mga previous topics all about the earthquakes, no, nung tayo ay grade 8 pa lamang at ito ay natakal na, and then somehow medyo yung iba binalikan lang natin ng konti, and then hindi ko siya masyadong pinahaba kasi para magiging ano lang, inuulit lang natin yung topic natin dun, and then ganito ang gagawin natin. Ito na yung last part ng, ito yung nag-iisa, hindi naman sa last, kumbaga nag-iisang part lang ng topic for first grading period. It's all about the plate tectonics. No? So, hindi naman tayo nagmamadali, kaya atin ang simulan. Okay, so meron akong tanong, did you believe that our planet has started over here? No? So, ayan, tignan natin yung larawan at somehow, kayo na lang yung makakasagot, no? Related dun, and then some of them at least is matatakal natin pagdating sa mga susunod na slide. So, plate tectonics is the theory that Earth's outer shell is divided into several plates that glide over the mantle, the rocky inner layer above the core. The plates act like a hard and rigid shell compared to Earth's mantle, no? Makikita natin dito kung anong klaseng plate tectonics na talagang tinutukoy natin, no? And then may mga iba't ibang klaseng theory, no, na makikita natin sa susunod na slide at madadama natin kung ano yung plate, no. Nakita natin kanina sa mismong unang slide kung ano yung plate na tinutukoy doon, but mas lalo natin siya maintindihan sa mga susunod pang mga slide. At suddenly dito sa image na ito, you will notice that there are two kinds of crust, no? So the thicker but less dense continental crust, and the oceanic crust, which is relatively thinner but denser than the continental crust, no? And then usually nandun din sa baba yung mantle, no? Kumbaga ito yung basics pa lamang po. And then base sa larawan na nakikita ninyo, ito yung plate tectonics. Nakita nyo na to sa una nating slide. And then, according to the plate tectonics model, the entire lithosphere of the Earth is broken into numerous segments called plates. Ayan, yung mga segments of plates na yan. Ito, itong portion na ito, yan. Pacific plate, Australian plate, Eurasian plate, North American plate, Caribbean plate, Nazca plate, South American plates, Scotia, and so forth. No? Ang dami nyo nakikita ang plate dyan. No? So, there are 7 relatively large plates and a number of smaller ones, including the Philippine plate. The plates move very slowly but constantly, and this movement is called the tectonics. Thus, the theory of moving lithospheric plates is called plate tectonics. So, kasi tayo dito sa mga tectonic plate boundaries, no? Meron tayong tatlong plate boundaries, no? So, hindi ko na muna sasabihin at malalaman nyo na rin sa susunod na slide, di ba? So, meron tayong convergent boundaries, no? Convergent boundaries occur when two plates meet or collide. They can be collisions between oceanic crust, which forms island arcs, and deep ocean trenches between an oceanic crust and a continental crust, which forms volcanic arcs and volcanoes, and between two continental crusts forms a mountains. So, ayan po ang convergent boundaries. Ayan po. So, next po, divergent boundaries are zones where lithospheric plates move apart from one another, forming mid-ocean ridges and rift valleys, which is, ayan naman na po siya. Yan po yung divergent boundaries. And then, lastly, ito yung transform boundaries are shear zones where plates move past each other without converging or diverging. The Earth's crust is neither largely modified nor destroyed along those boundaries. So, ayan po yung transform boundaries. Ito ay medyo familiar na rin yung tayo pagdating dito sa ganitong klaseng boundaries or plate boundaries. That's because medyo talaga natakal na natin ito nung kayo i-grade 8 pa lamang po. And then, ililink ko na lang dito yung ano ba tawag dito, yung lesson natin ng grade 8 all about the earthquake, no? And then next naman, meron tayong isang tao na nasa likod ng continental drift, no? Kasi maraming nagsasabi na proposed a theory, proposed a hypothesis, itago natin siya sa pangalang Alfred Wegener. And then somehow, magkaiba po yung hypothesis at saka sa theory, no? So yung hypothesis, it's all about the mere educational guess, no? Kumbaga, ito ay prediction pa lamang natin, no? And then, yung theory, ito na yung napatunayan natin. So, if we tell all about the continental drift, no, each major landmass consists of one or more continents. Continent is a big landmass surrounded by the oceans. Continental drift is the theory that a single large landmass broke up into smaller landmasses to form the continents, which then drifted to their present locations. So, in supercontinent, according to Wegener, about 300 million years ago, Pangea was breaking up into a huge and smaller continents which drifted to their present location. So ano nga ba yung Pangea na tinutukoy dito? And then, yung mamaya sasabihin ko sa inyo meaning. Also, Wegener also speculated that the breaking up of continents created motion that may have crumpled the Earth's crust in certain places which produces mountain ranges. So ano nga ba ang ibig sabihin ng Pangea? So yung Pangea, ito po yung protocontinent or yung supercontinent, or sa madaling sabi in other textbooks, tawag dito is all Earth. May dalawang parte ang Pangea, no? So ito yung Laurasia at saka Gondwanaland. And then yung Laurasia, ito yung northern part, and then yung Gondwanaland, medyo nakakagulo, no? Ito po yung southern part, no? Then next po yung Panthalassa. Panthalassa, ibig sabihin po niyan all seas or super ocean. So yun po, no? Pangea, continent, o yung Pangea, kalupaan, and then yung Panthalassa, ito yung karagatan, no? And then, meron tayong mga evidences for theory of continental drift, just like yung fossils and then mid-ocean ranges. So, Wegener cited several observations to prove his theory of continental drifting. He describes several evidences like how the continent edges fit with each other. He also used fossils, rock formation, mid-ocean ridges, which are undersea mountain ranges through the center of which run steep, narrow valleys, and climatic evidences to prove his theory. So, ayan po. So, nandito na tayo sa seafloor spreading theory, at ang nasa likod nito ay si Harry Hess at saka si Robert Pietz. And then, geologists states that as the seafloor spreads, boundaries such as fault zones, ridges, and trenches are formed, it is the strong evidence that there were slow and steady movements of the Earth's crust taking place under sea ridges. And then, in late 1950s, meron tayong geologist na si Harry Hess and then Robert Pietz na nagpropose ng valley at the center of the ridge was a crack or rift in Earth's crust. At this rift, molten rock or magma formed from deep inside Earth rises to fill the crack. As the ocean floor moves away from the ridges, rising magma cools and solidifies to form new rock that replaces the ocean floor. So, during this process, new ocean lithosphere form as magma rises to Earth's surface and solidifies at the mid-ocean ridges. Hess suggested that if the ocean floor is moving and renewing itself, katulad na nakikita nyo dito. So, base sa image na nakikita nyo dito, si Harry Hess, no, yung idea niya were only hypotheses. More evidences for seafloor spreading would come years later. In the mid-1960s, these evidences discovered through the means of Paleomagnetism. So, dito na tayo papasok sa another concept, no, ng isang theory related dito sa topic natin. So, Paleomagnetism is the study of the magnetic properties and alignment of magnetic minerals in rock, specifically as it relates to the reversal of Earth's magnetic poles. Also, the magnetic properties that the rock acquires during formation. So, tulad na nakikita ninyo, so yan yung isang example ng Paleomagnetism by applying the magnetic field lines, no? At it related to magnetic field lines, parang natakal ko na ito sa mga topics natin sa physics. I don't know kung ito ba natakal ko ba siya ng pang grade 7, grade 8, or alin man dun, no? Pero mas matatakal natin siya pagdating sa mga susunod na lesson natin for the second grading period, all about the electricity and magnetism, na may application din dun. So, next naman po is yung isostasy. Isostasy is the term describing the naturally occurring balance balance of masses within Earth's crust that keeps the planet's gravity in equilibrium. Isostasy is not a force or a process. It is the term for the phenomenon of adjustments Earth makes to stay balanced in mass and gravity. So, ayan po yung meaning ng isostasy. So, ayan na po siya, no? Just like yung glacier, no? Ayan. May iceberg, ang glacier ba siya? Iceberg pala. No, na kung saan, correct me if I am wrong, pagdating din dito. Akala natin malaki yung nakikita nating portion dito sa kalupaan niya, pero mas malaki pa pala dun sa mismong portion na yun para mas ma-determine natin yung equilibrium ng mismong ano na to, itong iceberg na ito. And then, orogeny is the process of forming mountain belts by folding and thrust faulting, which is the primary mechanism by which mountains are built on continents. So, how plate movements affects Earth system. So, generate volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, build mountains, and change global distribution of continents and then oceans. So, volcanoes occurring when eruptions can alter the atmosphere to change global climate. Mountains strongly affect global winds and precipitation patterns. At ito ay natakal ko na siya nung grade 8. It's all about the typhoons. Migration of continents and oceans affects winds and ocean currents. So, base sa nakikita ninyong mga linya na yan, ang tawag dyan is global conveyor belt. It's a system of ocean currents that transport water around the world. While wind primarily propels surface currents, deep currents are driven by differences in water densities in a process called thermohaline circulation. So, ayun po. Next po. Earthquakes alter the human environment, including surface faulting, tsunamis, soil liquefactions, ground resonance, landslides, and ground failure. And then, ito na yung mga list of most powerful earthquakes recorded by PVOX from 1960 to 2010. Ito ay pili lamang po. So, I will give you at least 5 seconds to check this kind of list. So, ayan, no? So, we encounter some of the powerful earthquakes here in this country. Where and when did they take place? Are there any volcanoes within the area of earthquake? What part of the Philippines do major and many earthquakes occur? Based on the table, what can you say about the relationship between volcano locations and recorded earthquakes? So, ayan po. Ito isa sa mga medyo namamalat ako sa recap, no, pagdating dito sa topic natin sa earthquake. And then, earthquakes are proofs that there is activity in the Earth's interior surface. Wait lang po saglit. So, next po, these are violent shaking of the Earth's surface caused by the movement of the Earth's crust. Slippage along these crustal plates causes the rocks to move along fault planes in the lithosphere and the subduction zones. So, an earthquake source can be volcanic or tectonic. So, alam naman natin kung ano yung anatomy ng earthquake, no? At ito yung, dadaan lang natin ito at pwede nyo siyang i-check dun sa previous video na ililink ko dito, no? So, nandito yung fault, epicenter, focus, plates, at saka seismic waves. So, in terms of tectonic earthquake, more common than volcanic earthquake. It occurs when two tectonic plates slide against each other, causing friction, heat, and movement of Earth's crust. So, next is, it occurs when, teka lang. Yun, volcanic pala. Volcanic earthquake, it occurs when a volcano produces acidic lava which dries quickly. As it dries, it blocks the volcano's crater and no magma can escape anymore. Pressure eventually medyo namamalat ako. Pressure eventually builds up in the interior of the Earth until it explodes. The explosion induces the movement of the plates. So, ito na yung last portion ng lesson natin, which is all about the Circum-Pacific Belt. So, mamaya malalaman natin kung ano yung ibig sabihin niya pagdating sa dulo ng slide natin. So, it is a long horseshoe-shaped seismic belt, which is a which is a narrow geographical area wherein a lot of earthquakes occur. This is a chain of active volcanoes and tectonic plate boundaries that fringes the Pacific basins. This chain is composed of island arcs such as Tonga, pakicorrect na lang ako kung anong pronunciation dun, and New Hebrides, the Indonesian archipelago, bansa natin, which is the Philippines, Japan, Kuril Islands, and the Aleutians. It also includes other arc-shaped geometric features of western coast of North America and Andes Mountains. It is also known as the Pacific Ring of Fire because of the presence of several volcanoes in this belt throughout its length, no? Yung Circum-Pacific Belt, yun na rin natawag sa kanya, Pacific Ring of Fire. Yan, base sa nakakita ninyo. So, ayun lamang po, no? At dito na po nagtatapos yung ating lesson for the first grading period. Maikli lang talaga siya, no? And then, suddenly, dito ko natatapusin yung ating lesson. And then, kung meron kayong questions, clarifications, or concerns, leave a comment below. And then, that's all for today. Goodbye.